budget? Is there any expenses that they could save? Bill seems to say no. And to their credit, I will say this, they did carve out $300,000 last year from the budget. So I'm a little bit more sympathetic to their cause. I'm sympathetic to the fact that we're closing this loophole. What I'm not sympathetic to is the fact that we've now gone from the lowest rates in Western Mass to now the highest rates in Western Mass, okay? So other communities have, many of the, Springfield, Chicopee, they have CSO problems, but they seem to be able to pay and do this for a lot cheaper than we do. And so we have to be sensitive to the fact that we have the lowest per capita income in Massachusetts. We also have to be sensitive to the fact that we have raised property taxes, the tax levy, $24 million a year over the last 15 years. How much more can you keep going to the well of residents and businesses for that matter? So people are just saying, I don't have any more. People are seeing their property taxes go up, up, up. And quite frankly, until we hit the levy ceiling, they probably would have kept going up. It's just that legally, the city, even if it wanted to, can't tax you anymore. They're legally precluded from taxing you anymore. That's how much they've taxed you. They have gone right to the max, $52 million. So now that we've maxed out the tax rate, we're now here to talk about the sewer. So what I have proposed, and I'm intrigued to hear what residents think, there is a proposal, and you didn't hear it from Bill, who I think should be here tonight, and he did know we were having this meeting. He does a great job, but he wasn't here for this evening for whatever reason. He and the mayor are requesting a 60-cent increase. That would raise about $600,000. I, on the other hand, of a school of thought that is, again, is at $5.40, that's an 11% jump in the rate. I think that's way too much. Just by way of comparison, the water department this year hasn't gone up in their rate since 2009. And do you know how much they went up for an increase this year? 2 cents. 2 cents. Like, you don't even notice that. This is the way it should be. The water department incrementally will go up a penny, 2 pennies, 3 pennies, 4 pennies. So when people start talking about 60 cents and 50 cents and 40 cents, it's like, what are you talking about? This is unheard of in other communities, that you have these type of spikes and jumps. So anyways, keeping in mind, we already have the highest rates. I'm in the school of thought that I think reasonably we can afford about 20 cents. I think that's about as much as you could probably go, in my humble view. I'd love to hear what residents think, but I am very sensitive to what business people are telling me, what residents are saying, and 20 cents will be about $4 a month, I believe, according to the chart, something in that vicinity. So not too thrilled about that, but nevertheless, I do agree that with the sewer shut off, it looks like we do need to have some increase in the rates. So that is by way, I hope that's been helpful. That's certainly my perspective without repeating what other people have said, but I'm really interested to hear what everybody has to say tonight on this issue. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to be heard on the sewer rate question tonight? If you can come to the microphone and give us your name and address, then we would welcome your comments. Thank you.
Good evening. You most of you know me. I've been here before complaining about this. Wondering why.
Could you just for the
rates
record.
Are so high.
Just your name and address.
Oh, Richard Thero, 191 Brown Avenue, Holyoke.
Thank you.
First of all, when you look at the profit margin, it's 20%. I did some figures for the last 6 months since you had a meeting. If the budget down there is $7 million, or close to $7 million, that means the sewer department, the people running the sewer department, the company gets over $1 million profit. That's number one. Number two, the billing system. I look at a billing system, and you know, it's very strange that if you get 2,500 gallons or more, or 2,500 gallons as a minimum charge of $5. I don't get the first 2,500 gallons for $5. That rate should be 15. That doesn't even cover the cost of sending the bill out. Okay? Then, the water department. The water department draws 5 million gallons of water a day. 4 million is billed. The wastewater treatment plant processes 7 million gallons of water a day, and I got this off from the internet, oil wastewater treatment plant, all nice printed out. So there's 3 million gallons of water a day that we're paying for, don't use. Like I said, I don't mind if I turn this water on, shower, whatever else. I'll pay for that. But the other 3 million gallons is 43%. Okay, so we have to pay for that. Now, the people up there that they want to get it away from the taxpayers out of general fund, I got my streets swept yesterday, finally. So I inquired, who pays for this? Oh, the sewage treatment plant. But they don't use it, they say. They get the streets are swept clean. They have catch basins and culverts. They're maintained every year, I don't know how many times a year. Who's going to pay for that? They're not, don't be charged a fee. I don't want to pay for it. Shouldn't they put something in? As far as not using the sewer line, every one of us here used the sewer line today, believe it or not. It rained. We came down the streets, but the rain came down and went down into the water treatment plant. I don't care where you live. That was water that we didn't use, but we had to pay for it, except the 700 Club.
You don't mean Jerry Falwell.
Well, anyways, I complained about it before, and I tried, and so they have to come up with something. The billing system should be done. They don't even have a minimum charge on here. At least the water department has a quarterly charge. They don't have it on here. You know, and you say that 2,500 gallons is $5. That's $11 and something cent difference. I had it figured out. Times 4 times a year. I could use that $45 in my pocket. I don't get it. Who put this in? Why? There's something wrong with the whole system here. Before any rates go up, they should get the billing system straightened out. It doesn't make sense that we've been supporting this for a long time. We've been carrying in the rest of the people for a long time. Somebody has to start paying their fair share. And finally, the system that we have, you have to ask yourself, is it legal? I brought this up before. I never got an answer. When Mayor Sullivan and the Department of Public Works commissioners exempted these people from paying any sewage fees, did they exceed their authority? By what authority did they have to exempt a certain group of people? I never heard of it. Not in any city. What is? You know, something wrong. So if it's illegal, then we should start charging. We should look into it. Maybe the city solicitor could check it out. Maybe get a writing from the Attorney General. I don't know. But it gets something that either it's legal or it's not legal. That'd be like our mayor saying, well, this group here don't have to do this or something like that, don't have to pay this. Not fair, not right. So anyways, like I told my counselor, before we raise any rates, get the bill straightened out because I'm not happy. I got into a discussion with a fella at one of the council meetings here, and I says to him the same thing I told you. I says, you get the streets swept and everything else. He says, well, I pay my taxes too. I says, you pay your taxes? I says, I pay my taxes, I pay my sewer bill, and I'm paying your share of the sewer bill. Well, he wasn't happy, but that's the truth. That's be it. You know, you want services, you gotta pay for something. It's part of the infrastructure of the city. And as they add more SDOs to pipe more water down to that wastewater treatment plant, it's gonna get more to be processed. So it's gonna get expenses every year. So, I mean, my water bill, I got it here. I paid it yesterday, by the way. $150 for a quarter. 4 times a year. Oh, no, twice a year it goes up because the spring and the summer when you have a garden of flowers, it spikes like crazy. And that's a house with 4 people in it. I go by how many people in a house? 4 people. It's a multi-family house, but, you know, a single, and my wife and I, 4 people. $150 for a sewer bill. Something wrong. So I think somebody should look into this and maybe they, I don't know why Mayor didn't negotiate with the water treatment outfit down here. What do they need $1 million profit for? How come it's 20%? That's unheard of. I mean, it's fabulous. At that rate, the more they spend, the more they make. Simple as that. So, anyways, like I say, I'm not happy, and you know my thoughts, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for sharing your opinions with us. I'm sorry. Oh.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak?
My name's Deb Aloisi. I live at 147 Sycamore Street, and I haven't done my research nearly as well as this gentleman has because he was trying to shut down the privatization before, and he was just telling me about it. I'm in agreement with City Council Bacon and Jordan on this issue. We need to collect from the people who are not paying. If we raise the rates, it could be a problem for the landlords. They may have to raise the rents as well, so this is something that was brought up by the person who spoke before me. I'm not thrilled about the idea of paying for somebody else who isn't paying. I'm a homeowner, so, and that doesn't excite me too much. So a modest change I'm for, but also for collection, more aggressive collection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Any other council? Oh,
Helen Norris, 2090 Northampton Street, is a homeowner. I'm sorry that Mr. Fuqua isn't here because one thing about raising the rate is what is before us, but what is actually, besides people not paying, what is actually the cause of the increase in the operating costs? Is it the volume of what's going into the wastewater treatment plant? Or is it the overflow of the large basin that they created that's creating problems with the river?
if I may, this isn't going to be a specific answer to your question, but, Councilor Jordan and I were at a meeting with the mayor for about 45 minutes relative to the budget proposal. And what we were led to understand is that a large portion of the cost within the contract is the carrying costs of the loans, along with the contract itself, which has escalator clauses in it each year.
Oh, well,
So
I'm
they're
aware of
saying on
that.
the operations side, it's balanced, but on the loan carrying side, it isn't. So if you break out the pieces of the fund, that is what they pointed to. But by law, as I've been led to understand, the fund itself must be self-sustaining, either by the fees that are raised or by the tax money put into it to make it balance. But correct me if I'm wrong or if I left anything out. That is what we were given for information relative to this matter.
Okay. Well, I'm aware of the escalator clauses. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here who wishes to be heard on the question of the sewer rate? Okay, hearing nothing, what is the pleasure of the committee relative to this?
Yeah, go ahead. No, Dave, go ahead, by all means.
Actually, I was very happy to hear Dick's comments. I, for one, can't answer any of his questions. I'd like to get those questions addressed by either GDF or Mr. Fuquay, and so I'm a more informed person. So I am of the mood that I won't vote for any increase whatsoever tonight, no matter what was proposed. I think we should get, I mean, I think he raised five, by my count, at least 5 separate issues, all relative. He's done a lot more homework on this than I'm suggesting a lot of people did, and I'd like to, unless somebody knows the answers to those questions, I'd rather have it.
I can answer a couple components of it.
Could I just ask that Counselor Bartley list his questions?
Well-
Because that would become a basis for continuing the public hearing to get them answered.
Well, I took notes on what was said, and I think lots of we've heard before, but the billing system itself, there's, you know, the fee, the minimum fee with the 2,500 gallons, how's that, what is that based on? Can that be adjusted? The profit margin built into the contract, I think I need to see a little more in depth about the economics of that, a little more in-depth information about the economics of that contract. I think the discrepancy between what the Holyoke Waterworks says uses for, I think Dick mentioned 4 million gallons. I think he mentioned the sewer fund is 7 million gallons. I think one of the most important things he brought up was the which I'm not aware of. I don't understand how it worked. Is the exemption for certain members of the community who are exempt from paying the sewer fee, and. Okay. Well, I thought maybe I'll just list them, and then you can riff about
Yeah.
that. What do you think? Is that okay?
So,
and
right,
then-
so I have 4.
Yeah, all right, and then I think we were talking, and then I think the other thing was talking about the street sweeping as well. Is exactly how is that part of the contract? Are they doing that for? I mean, I just don't understand why they are doing that. I'm glad they are, but let's just hear a little bit more details on that. So I think those are the questions that, if I heard them right, I mean, we all heard them. I assume we all took notes, mental notes, but if I heard them right, then let's get them answered. I mean, we're all here, right? So, thank you.
Sure. So, Counselor Jourdain?
Yeah, I'm going to take a crack at a couple of those. Again, not surprised. Always does his homework, Dick Theroux, and I've enjoyed listening to him for many, 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 many years.
Come to my Ward 3 meeting here.
Yeah, he's always a wealth of knowledge. Sure. Yeah. Of course. No. Let me just take a crack at a couple of them. One that I would love to know, because I've never been given a straight answer, is what you call profit is formally titled management fee. And just so you know, that goes in their pocket. And we've always wanted to know exactly what that is. No one's ever been able to get our fingers on that. I'd love to get the number for that. That would be a great one. I'm told it could be as high as $650,000. That was a few years ago, to your point. Would love to know what that number is. I think public has a right to know where their money's going. The issue of street sweeping, yes, all the streets in the whole city are swept, even the people that don't pay sewer, to your point. And that costs $120,000 a year. And that was the number as of last year. So what I have requested that street sweeping come out of being paid by the sewer fund. That always was paid as a general municipal budget line, but when they did the privatization, they threw it in there. And that's why now United is doing it. They appropriated our equipment, took our equipment, and they're doing it, but then they charge us as part of the cost. There's no free lunch. $120,000 a year. That came from Bill Fuqua. Now, the good point, great observation. City is processing 5 million, water department is flowing through 600 Water Street up there at McLean, I believe that's the street, up at McLean, the treatment facility for our water, Correct, about 5 million gallons a day. Now, why are we processing 7 million gallons a day down at the sewer plant? One is street runoff, that's one answer. Number two is Daybrook. Helen exposed that one, that comes right from our beautiful community field and feeds right into the sewer line. So we're treating about 1 million gallons a day of brook water. Beautiful brook water, you know? Yeah, and they decided that on a quote-unquote cost-benefit analysis, that it was, instead of redirecting this water, just run it into the sewer line. And so you're treating brook water. Third one, and that's not the only one, thank you. On Michigan Avenue too, very good. Yeah, you'll have to come in one day. We gotta tape all your knowledge because you're the expert on this. I learned more from Helen on all this. The third one that we know about is and why the fund, by the way, is short. The biggest reason, not talked about here tonight, is we have to remember what is coming from Sunoco. They're a huge industrial customer. All of that water that they use for the cooling and all of this type of stuff, that goes down into the plant as well. So that's coming from the river, right? So that water that they're treating and stuff has certain turbidities and different things that they have all these measurements, and there's a contract. It's about 40 years old, and I'm not gonna get into whether it's good or bad that their rate went down. They are technically paying more than the straight commercial rate. However, it should be noted that they used to pay $3 million a year. And by a vote of approximately 5 years ago, the sewer commission lowered their bill by a third to $2 million a year. So when they did all the original projections, when we were here, you know, how this is gonna be funded and all of the rates in 2005 and all the prospective financial analysis was based on that not changing. And so that $1 million loss of revenue to the fund, Sunoco paying that much less, this is why you're seeing also the big shortfall. So not only is expenses going up, you're also seeing this additional commercial revenue has been lost. And I'm not gonna get into the whole, was it justified or not, but the point is those numbers did go down. So this is one of the other reasons. But the point is you have all these other sources of water besides what's metered. Because we also know the other pieces, which should even make the variance greater than what you even think, is the fact that the sewer is paid based on your water meter, but we all know that many people wash their cars, water their lawns, have swimming pools. All this water is never even going down to the sewer plant. So to the point of all of this brook water and these other things that are going down there, the variance between metered water and what's coming from Ty-Carmody Reservoir down to there is even that much even bigger because of the fact that they're treating non-metered water more so because a lot of the water that we use in our homes and is never going actually even down there. So that's a couple of the questions, but some of those I don't even have the answers to, like the management fee. That would be good to know.
Can you come to the microphone, because there may be people watching?
Yeah.
I just have one question too, regards to the septage that the wastewater treatment plant takes from private vendors who flush the septic systems. It's not just Holyoke's residents' septic systems that are being brought in, trucked in there. And what is the fee that they're charged by wastewater treatment plant?
I believe there was a fee structure created. The number $200 is coming to mind. I'm not sure if that, but we could ask that. There was a fee, we talked about that a couple years ago, and there was a fee established.
Yeah, is it going straight to profit though, or is it helping to offset some of the costs?
We don't know.
Well, and I just want to clarify a couple of the points. Right now, every single person in the city, and for the last 4 years, every single person in the city has been paying for all the sewer. So the fallacy of a club that's not paying or has some exemption is a fallacy. And not only are they not a special club getting a break, They're a special club that's paying for their own septic systems when they fail to the tune of thousands of dollars, in addition to paying for a sewer service that they do not receive. So if we're gonna talk about fair share, somebody having to pay twice, once for something they have and once for something they can never have, I don't think that meets the test of fairness. So, on the street sweeping question, the question's been asked and answered. There's nobody that would complain if that street sweeping cost was taken out of the contract and put into the regular budget. That's been asked and answered for at least 3 years now. So that's just a matter of where the mayor puts it in the budget.
But just for the record, they want that 120 on top of the 60 cents. So this is why I'm saying is they don't need 60 cents, not even close to 60 cents.
Right, and I agree with that. If you wish to speak, could you come to the microphone? Thanks.
Just a little information that you just gave about the sewer, the septic system users. You know that last year at the Highlands, there was quite a bit of sewage that had to be done, sewage work had to be done up there. I got this right from an employee who works. And the homeowner footed the bill themselves. No help, no nothing. Now, with the rates we're paying at $150 a month, you know, that's a lot of money. Over 20 years, that's a lot of money. And these people, when they bought the houses up in that district with septic system, they knew it. Shouldn't they be planning to at least update them or something without the help from us? There's something wrong, because we have to pay everything. We pay right from the line right out to the street. We pay. The girl in Brown Avenue paid $5,000 last year. People up in the Highlands paid thousands because of the pipe failures. We live in the oldest neighborhoods in the city. And what causes them to go? The trees. The trees are planted over the tree belts, over the things. Guess what? When they go, we pay. That's public property, by the way. This truck goes over your thing and bounces the road, breaks your pipe, we pay. That's private property up there, and they all knew it. So, you know, like I say, in the long run, it comes out even Steven. If you take $600 a year times 20 years, it was $12,000. That's what we paid for the sewers. They should be planning for this. So it's not all like you have to feel like we have to support them. You know, no, they use the roads, they use the things. They should be contributing to the city. Thank you.
Counselor Bartley?
And Dick, thanks again. And just through the chair, Madam Chair, may I address Kevin?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, thumbs up.
Chair.
Well, we get technical stuff. So, Kevin, thanks, Mr. President, thanks for, you know, your insight as always. I appreciate that. I was surprised to hear that United is using city equipment, so I'm hopeful, you know, if you would just take a note of that, Kevin, I just want to just have you expand on that a little bit more, if you would. I think the second thing you said that was really noteworthy is what, you know, Councilor Norris, what she brought up. I'd like to expand upon, I'd love to expand upon that information as processing, not just the street run-up, but the Daybrook, the Michigan Ave, whatever else. I would love to get, I think that's all got to be on the table so we all understand it here on this body. Maybe we all do, but I think what you intimate is when Councilor Norris stepped down, a lot of that knowledge stepped down with her, and I don't know if it continued on this body, Kevin. So that's kind of what I heard you say, but maybe you could expand upon that one as well. And I think the other point that you raised had to do with a private business, and I'd heard something about that before, but again, I don't have those details in front of me, specifically maybe an older contract, maybe a sewer commission vote that, I mean, we get their minutes every month. I don't remember a specific vote relative to Sunoco in the last 2 years, but it's possible. But Okay, perhaps it was before I came on the board. I just don't recall a vote like that. So I guess if you could just expand upon that, so I could understand that a little bit better, if you would, through the chair.
Thank you. If you could hang on to those questions just for a minute. I have Counselor Lisi in the queue.
Thank you.
Counselor Lisi?
I just wanted to note that I think that some of the comments that Mr. Theroux is raising related to the infrastructure and how the whole city is utilizing the sewage system in terms of the pipes and rainwater fall and runoff, et cetera, is absolutely accurate. And I also want to point out that there are other communities nearby, Chicopee, for example, that have a stormwater runoff fee to capture the cost, and that would be distributed evenly amongst all the residents. I do think that the sewer fee is, if we could separate out the stormwater fee, then the sewer fee can really be viewed as a user fee, and then something more like a stormwater fee, similar to what the mayor was, I think, proposing this past summer, that we should consider, would be a way to capture those costs, the infrastructure costs, the use of the pipes that are underneath our roads and the sewer, the sewers that are collecting the rain runoff. That would be a more fair way of distributing the cost there. And I think to some extent, Chicopee has a lower sewer fee because they have this additional stormwater fee that takes account of the different way that these pipes and systems and operations are utilized. So I just want to plant a seed there because I do think that there's merit to separating out a stormwater fee from what I think of as a user fee related to sewage coming in and out of our homes. That's the only point that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just note that when the mayor came out to the area of the city where people have paid for septic forever and have paid for sewer for the last 4 years and raised his stormwater fee idea for the water that can not possibly ever enter the treatment plant, I guess he decided he still wanted to be mayor because he dropped the idea after he met with the residents out in West Holyoke. Everybody's willing to pay their fair share. People aren't willing to pay twice. And that is just the reality of people wanting to pay for things they can have and use and not wanting to pay for things they can't. Councilor Jourdain?
Thank you. Without getting, the stormwater fee is obviously very contentious point, because obviously the view, especially in West Holyoke for people that are sewer users is very ingrained that, I have this private system, so therefore I should not pay. The only point I'll make on that without getting too long is just leave this little kernel of fact. 82%, according to Bill Fuqua in an email from about 9 years ago, was that 82% of the flow that goes to the wastewater treatment plant is from street runoff, not from house residential use, 82%. So the question is, who should pay for water that goes in the sewer drains on South Street, Northampton Street, High Street? I don't know. I don't live on High Street, right? But don't we all have to pay for who drives on High Street? I don't live on South Summer Street, but who pays for their water to go into the drain? Who pays for the water to go down 141 or any of these roads? The point is, these things, this water is going to the plant, and that water that's coming off the street is being treated. So we do need to think about that going forward. What is quote-unquote equitable? Okay, so Councilor Bartley asked a couple questions. I believe the first one was regarding the brook water. Now, one is Councilor Norris, who always goes the extra mile. At least I was always very impressed when she was here. She, I believe, retained an engineer to actually have it measured. Exactly. Yeah. So there actually is, and I'm sure I have back in my old notes, we actually had an engineer hired to metric out how much water was coming in from this brook water that's being treated. And I guess basically, according to Bill, he's well aware of it, and I'm sure if he was here, he would say, yes, this is true. This is an old topic. It's not talked about much, but I think the city just looked at it as cost-benefit analysis. What would the cost be to redirect this water in such a way that it went not into the wastewater treatment plant versus putting it into and having it treated? So I think they just looked at it as, well, we're gonna pay to treat it from now and into eternity versus somehow doing some other conduit to redirect the water down. I guess theoretically, just by way of gravity, since Holyoke is built on a hill, we would get it down to the river some other way. But they never could come up with another way that they felt was financially feasible.
Well, I guess if he gave you an 82% number, he must have been counting the brooks too as street runoff, because otherwise there'd be nothing coming from anywhere else.
Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, think about it. Every time there's a major rainstorm or event, okay, all that water, that's being treated. That water is being treated. It is, and EPA requires us to treat it because we use a combined system. And so, you know, that's not from residential use. And that water, you know, this is how it's so big. All this street runoff this is such a big number. Counselor, just refresh my memory. Oh, the Sunoco agreement, yes. 40 years ago, I can get you a copy of the contract. I'm gonna say it was inked in the late 70s. And actually, it might have been 73, 74. I have a copy of the agreement. Basically set what the rates would be. It gets into all these different loading factors on turbidities and things that they're in there. The theory being Sunoco had all kinds of things that were dyes and all these different things that were going into the water, and it changed the weight of the water, and all these things had to be pulled out of the water in the treatment process, so they paid all these additional costs. They then, to save money, obviously, they went through and hired, it's my understanding when I found out about this, of course, there should have been a conversation that took place to have a little bit more of a discussion about this. But nevertheless, the commission voted, I want to say it's it's when it's when we started running into money problems, basically, long and short of it. Was say 4 or 5 years ago. They cut their bill by $1 million. Now, Bill, we've talked about this. I had an order filed several years ago to go over this, and basically the long and short of it is they brought in all these different experts to say that under the contract, they were allowed to have this reduction, blah, 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 under the provisions of that agreement. Now, how much? Basically, yeah. At this point, yeah, based on their current usage, that they have to measure the water and all these different metrics they have to do on it on an ongoing basis. But assuming that these different factors that the water is weighed on, and they're a huge user. In fact, I think it's to the tune of 20 or 25% of the total flow comes from Sunoco alone that goes to the plant. And so this is a big deal. And basically, they have all these different metrics that they use under this agreement. It's quite a long document. And I'm not sure how sophisticated we are in terms of having engineer. I think the other thing that goes to the point that was raised earlier is this 700-page agreement that we have with United Water currently. There is extremely complex. All the different loadings, there's, like 4 different systems of all the different factors. And I mean, you'd have to be absolutely unequivocally an engineer. There was originally, and they did this to save money, but there was originally earmarked in the cost $100,000 for contract compliance. And they cut that out of the budget because they didn't want to spend the money. But so basically Bill's the contract compliance person. But in fairness to Bill, how on earth could he possibly be holding them accountable to the contract? Because, you know, as knowledgeable as he is, he does not have the scientific knowledge and engineering knowledge to know all the different variables. That all we do is we get an annual invoice that says, pay that, and we write a check. That's how much it goes into it, okay? They give us a number every year, and in it is baked the management fee. These guys ain't down there because they love Holyoke. I mean, they provide a really good service, and you'll never hear anybody object. The quality is still the same in terms of them doing what they need to do, and they meet the EPA requirements. I believe we're allowed 4 non-compliant days per year. Nobody has had any issues since, but we had great record when we were public. If they, my point was, we could run it publicly, and if we put in the plan, all these things, we could have done it as equally as compliant. And then you'd have a budget, right? Because we used to have a budget, and it was line item, just like all the other departments. And you'd say, so much for maintenance workers, so much for chemicals, so much for this. Now, who knows what these expenses are? All you get is one invoice and pay this amount. And we write a check for that amount, and that's all you know. So from a government transparency perspective, and they say, well, we're a private company and we don't have to tell you these things, and then it's, it's sort of a black box, and that's concerning. So the last question you asked was on the point about street sweeping. Street sweeping, yes. When they took over, you'll see that the street sweepers, our street sweepers, paid for by the people of the Holyoke, actually have their indicia on them. They just repainted them and put their logos on them. But those were paid for by John Q. taxpayer of Holyoke. Many of them used to be our colors with DPW logos and the whole 9 yards on them. And they were the recipients of our equipment. That was part of the deal. And they go around doing street sweeping and such, and they charge us for that. And so the line item, so I asked Bill probably 3 or 4 years ago when we started saying, the fund is short and the fund is short, and I said, well, how much is the street sweeping? And that's when he gave me the number 120,000. So theoretically, that should not be in the enterprise fund. That should be pulled out. So when we hear this number, $1 million, you gotta always take out the 120,000 for street sweeping. There's other things that are in there as well, the mentioning about some of the capital improvements, culverts, and some of these things. It's arguable you could put those in the general fund as well versus the sewer fund. But to your point, that this occurs and it's a cost of $120,000.
Thank you, Councilor Jordan. The only thing I would add is I have a general recollection about Sunoco that part of the reason why their fees were reduced is because they invested in filtration and cleaning of the waters within the plant itself. So what they're now shipping to the treatment center is cleaner than it was before. That's a simplistic explanation, but that's the basic concept that was shared with us. And we have asked through DPW in the past for United Water to share their profit information, and they have declined. Yes.
Helen Norris, 29 Northampton Street. Just want to make one comment. The street sweeping is part of the maintenance of the sewer system, because if we didn't do that, we'd clog up all the pipes. So they have to do that to maintain some ability for the system to work. It's part of the maintenance. And then I wanted to also make a comment about what Bill Fuqua said about the amount of runoff comes from the streets. Folks, it's I-91. The federal government should be paying their fair share in the runoff. And the Mass Department of Transportation, they have a whole thing about the runoff from these highways and where it goes and what burden it puts on the small systems. So that's something that should be looked into.
Thank you.
I just want to say, great catch on that, on I-91, that's right, I remember that now. And number two is, but on the street sweeping, Helen, nobody's saying we shouldn't do street sweeping. The point is, it used to be in the general fund budget, now it was put in the sewer fund, and then they're saying, voila, we're short. The point is, that shouldn't be street sweeping should be done, that 120 should be done in the general fund budget. It shouldn't be in the sewer budget, and therefore,
To maintain the system. That's part of maintenance.
yeah, but what I'm saying is they're baking it into this invoice that they're sending us. They're like, sure, we'll do it, and then they just tag it in there. That's what they're doing.
Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard on the sewer rate issue tonight? Yes,
Mike Rogers, 11 Francis Avenue. I first came in here and I was going to go in favor of the 20-cent increase that both Kevin and Ms. Bacon proposed, but under what I've heard lately, it seems to me there's more questions than answers to vote for any increase. 91 is another great example. There just seems to be a lot more questions than answers to vote on any type of increase right now. Till we get some answers, either both from United Water as well as the board itself, before we start paying out more funds. So I would encourage the board to kind of get these questions answered as soon as possible before we go into another rate increase, if that's at all possible. I appreciate that. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, so having. Right, and being that this is a public hearing, we have to table it and continue it to a date certain. So. Council Bartley?
I'm prepared to make that motion, but I just want to make I really appreciate, obviously, the comments tonight, because they were vital. So the public that showed up tonight, it's about a fraction of the city, made some really insightful comments. So I think the breaks, if I'm picking up the sense of this board, and I'll also let the public know that this body tried to get another 60-cent rate passed before us in 2013, and 9 of us said no go. So this has come up before. So just keep in mind with the history on this. So 2013, we had a vote, I think it was December of 2013, if I remember right, but a vote came for a 60-cent increase, and 9 of us said, not going to happen. And these questions are outstanding questions in all senses of the word of outstanding. So hopefully we can, if I may, Madam Chair, I would like to get it's just some clarification as to when we have another round in this. I'm suggesting Mr. Fuqua is going to be gone to greener pastures, so we're going to have a little gap there. I'm also suggesting that it would be nice if somebody from GDF Suez or whatever they call it, United Water, wants to come in as well. Maybe they could answer some questions, and possibly the mayor.
Yeah,
That would be my suggestion.
open the books.
Well, we,
Continue the public hearing to June 14th, which would be our next ordinance committee meeting.
hang on one second. I just do want to make a comment for the record, given that there's not a lot of people in the audience speaking tonight, that there were 30 people at a meeting last night in Ward 5 that did give me feedback on this matter through a budget review. I just want to make people aware of that. So,
Helen,
So-
excuse me, Linda, can I just make one other loud
Sure.
observation? 20's the top of any rate I would support. I mean, obviously, the proposal requested by the department, and by the way, if you look at the ordinance, the department is supposed to make a recommendation to us. We actually haven't had a formal recommendation. I can say, because and I believe everybody in the room will agree, we heard the recommendation is 60 cents. The mayor has told us 60 cents. I could never support a rate over 20 cents, but I agree. I think we should get the answers to these questions. And then once we get to that, maybe they come up with something else. We don't have to do any increase, but I'll be interested to see what the answers to these questions are at our next meeting.
and I would note that the mayor
Sir Lopez wants-
had been requested by more than one counselor to do a contract review. But all contract negotiation and review is under the purview of the mayor, not city councilors. Counselor Lopez?
If I may, I just want to clarify, when Bill was here, he mentioned that the timeline of increasing any sewer is critical, because, I mean, if we get bill every quarter.
Right.
So I don't think that we should rush to do any of this. We should talk to Bill and invite United and get whatever information. And also see if we can take care of number 4. I think if we can bring in some money before we do anything, I think that would be ideal.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So before us, we have a motion to continue the public hearing until June 14th at 6:30.
Was that seconded?
I
Second.
believe either one of you made the motion and the other one. Okay.
I just want to clarify, are you going to invite Bill and United?
Yep.
Or how that's going to
Well-
happen?
They were supposed to be here tonight.
Well, but I just want to make sure that we email or write to them just to make sure that we don't have any excuses.
Well, United would not necessarily have been here tonight. Typically, Bill Fuqua would have attended as a matter of course. He is leaving at the end of this month.
Maybe from now on, we just
So-
give United a standing invite.
Right, but I
All sewer matters.
I don't assume they had one for tonight, so,
But Bill would
you
have
know.
been able to answer a lot of those questions.
Right,
Yep.
right, so, yes. And, but if it's not him, it will have to be somebody from the department in the acting capacity. Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, so perhaps would one of the members of the Board of Public Works care to attend to provide their input, especially the veteran members? Because I'd like to hear more about their vote for Sunoco. And then second of all, June 14th, while I appreciate the fact that we want to have Bill here, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be swamped with budget types of issues. I mean, the president has set up 3 or 4 hearings with a vote on the 15th. That's now been changed to the 15th, is my understanding. Because we have a DGR on the 13th that's going to consider the CPA. And now, the 14th, we handle this. I mean, Madam Chair, I would just suggest that we look to a alternate date after the budget process. But if I'm in the minority, I'll be here, but I'm just suggesting it's a lot to process.
Well, I hear your concerns on the timeline, but the concerns relative to what we do or don't do with the rate are contingent upon getting information, and the deficit that we've been dealing with has been going on for 4 years now. And I think the point that Superintendent Fuqua is making is that the longer we wait and keep kicking the can down the road, the worse it will be. I think the question is, can we get the answers to our questions? You know, and I would just remind folks that the budget that the mayor is declaring balanced is based on a 60-cent sewer rate increase. So we can't walk away from the budget issue by meeting later, because it's part of the budget issue right now. If we fail to act, then you have the 60-cent deficit sitting there in the budget for the budget meeting on the 15th. I mean, I'm just saying. But I will go by the will of the committee.
I think that, if I may, I think the city council has to balance the budget for the mayor. I
Well,
think that we should
that's
not allow
apparent.
that, even, we have to make some hard decision and do it. Because, I mean, if we continue doing it, why should we allow that? So it's time to bite the bullet.
All right. So we have a motion before us to continue to June 14th. If somebody wishes to amend that, then somebody needs to offer an amendment to the motion.
We could go with the 14th, and then if we have the information we need, we move forward. If we don't, then we postpone it again. Is that a?
The other option would be for 31st.
No,
Maybe
then
the
you're into
28th?
July.
June 28th, you mean?
No, I'm just talking about May 31st.
We have a budget.
I have a budget hearing already on the 31st. Yeah.
And I'm just concerned, Madam Chair, is that enough time for, I mean, first of all, somebody's got to pose these questions. I mean, I don't want to dump it on you, but, I mean, I'll type them up and summarize and get them to you, and you can distribute them as appropriately. But is that enough time? And so why are we, I mean,
Well, these questions have been asked and answered more than once. So we're really asking them again to see if we can compel people to give us a different answer.
I don't
So
know.
it's not that people have not researched these questions in the past. So what I would respectfully request from the committee is that we have the motion to table, and that we continue the hearing to the date certain and list the questions that we want the answers to, that will become part of our record, that will go out to the department, the board, and the contractor. And we'll see where it goes.
All right, June 14th.
So, if Counselor Bartley, I want to
Motion
make
on the floor
sure,
right now is
to continue to June 14th at 6:30.
Why don't we
And
take a
I
vote
want
on
to, hang
that
on a
and see
second.
where that goes?
I want to make sure that in terms of the questions that Counselor Bartley had laid out that we want to seek answers on, they include the question relative to minimum fees on the billing. They include profit margin in the contract.
Discrepancy between the gallons and of the waterworks and then the gallons of the sewer commission. The exemption under Mayor Sullivan, that he proposed, and then, anything relative to Sunoco. And then I think another question was raised relative to the fee for flushing septic systems. I don't think that was clarified, because, I think we threw out a number of 200, but,
No, that's for people that empty the septic systems and bring it to the treatment plant.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I understand what's, you know,
Fees.
what is the fee? That question was raised.
How much is the fee?
For the contractors.
Yep.
Okay, and that certainly doesn't preclude any other questions from being asked, but in
Certainly.
fairness to the people who are asking to come in, it's just helpful to let them know what came up. So on the motion,
Aye.
Aye.
aye. So the public hearing is continued until June 14th at 6:30.
So why don't we take up, since folks are here and it's still on the sewer issue, why don't we take up item number 4?
Which is the next one.
Second.
Yeah, so motion to remove from the table the item regarding the shut-off for non-payment of sewer.
All in favor? Aye. So item 4 is a order filed by Counselor Jordan that the city council adopt an ordinance for water shut-off authority for the Holyoke Water Department. At our last meeting, we had folks in from the water department, DPW, and the agreement was that Mr. Conti would meet with our
It's the same.
city attorney,
Just a
and they
couple.
would discuss a reasonable structure and policy to be able to move forward, given some concerns and, policy advice that we received from Attorney Cunha. And so before us tonight, we have amended language, and it's my understanding that they had a productive and constructive meeting, and this amended language is before us, and that should we adopt this language, recommend it to the city council, and that the city council adopts it, that we will be able to move forward with what we were talking about with the goal of compelling people to pay their bills. For folks in the public who don't have access to the language, I just want to read it into the record. It is not terribly lengthy. So the language we are looking at is that the city of Holyoke reserves the right to terminate service for non-payment of sewer use charges in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 83, 16B, provided, however, that such disconnection is subject to any and all limitations set forth in federal and state laws, rules, or regulations. B, the Board of Public Works Sewer Commission shall adopt a policy establishing the procedures for termination of sewer service. The Board Public Works Sewer Commission shall be authorized to enter into an agreement with the Holyoke Water Works to engage the services of the Holyoke Water Works as an independent contractor to terminate water service as an initial step towards terminating sewer service in accordance with their policy. The Board of Public Works Sewer Commission shall adopt a schedule of fees to be charged in connection with the termination and/or restoration of sewer service. D, service will be restored upon receipt of all outstanding amounts due to the city of Holyoke and to the Holyoke Water Works. Said amount shall include all accrued interest and all applicable shut-off and turn-on fees charged by the Board of Public Works and the Holyoke Water Works.
For a motion.
Counselor Jordan?
Thanks. I'd like to make a motion that this be received, adopted, and placed in the legal form for our next meeting.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Under
And
discussion?
under discussion, this, I thought was well-crafted, short, sweet, right to the point. It allows us, one, to have the authority to shut off the water as appropriate and as directed by the DPW for those who do not pay. It requires the Sewer Commission to establish a policy and procedure, which was one of the requisite requirements that the Water Department required, that there's an articulated written policy that lays out who would have their, potentially their shut off of their water for the non-payment. And what we learned at the last meeting is the policy is going to be if you're in arrears greater than 2 billing cycles. So that means you'd have to be more than 6 months in arrears before you would get the actual notice to say, hey, time to pay your bill, or please no, we're coming, right? And they're going to follow the exact protocol that the water department uses for water shutoff. So there's not going to be this dual system. And the water department, I feel extremely comfortable, has this down. They've been doing it for many, many years, this shut-off procedure. They go way above and beyond. First, they send you a letter. Then they send you a certified letter. Then they come out and actually mark the meter and start painting on your property to show you, and then they leave a notice at the door. So if you don't get like the idea that they mean business and this is serious, it isn't going to be, oh, I missed one letter in the mail and now my water got shut off. No, literally they come, they give you notice 1 in the mail, 2 is by certified mail, 3 is they're actually marking your meter and drawing out a line where they're gonna, the whole line. So, you come and you start seeing blue lines on your property and you haven't paid your water bill, might be a good indication it's time to pay up. And then they leave you a notice at the door personally for you to pay and get into a payment plan. Their current payment plan procedure is you pay half of the bill, and then they give you an additional 3 months to pay the remainder. And what is important to note here is if we have an aggressive policy, these bills will not be overwhelming. Like, what gets crazy is when you give somebody with a $4,000 bill, because you let it go for 4 or 5 years. Then they're like, oh, it's so tough for me to come up with $2,000, or they have the song and the dance. But if you have somebody who's in arrears by 6 months or a year, then the bill is probably something in the vicinity of $400. And now they have to come up with $200, and then they have 3 months to pay the other $200. So to me, it's very reasonable. And if people want to have this service, I think there's reasonable safeguards in place here to do it. The other thing is that the water department will be indemnified for the work that they do. And number 2 is they're also going to be able to recoup the fees, just like they recoup when they shut off for water non-payment. They're going to be able to recoup the fee. So for example, if they come and they shut it off, it's a $100 charge to get reinstated. Now, if you call them up on a Sunday afternoon and say they shut it off on Friday and then it's Sunday, literally this is how it works. They charge you double. They charge you $200 if you want them to come in on weekends or holidays. But if you say, well, I'll turn it back on tomorrow on Monday, then it's only the $100 fee. So that's your call, how bad you want it back on. So, and this is all going to be the same fees, the same protocols, the same everything. This should be, I think, a very seamless mechanism by the water department, who is, very acute and professional on all this. It's shutting off their own service, obviously for the non-payment of the sewer, and that's a key element and point. But they know where the boxes are. They know how to turn off this. This is their operating system. So I feel very comfortable. This ordinance also does not micromanage the departments or establish the policies for them. It allows the 2 departments to cooperate and communicate between themselves. So I think this is going to be great. This is a long time coming that we finally have an agreed, everybody feels comfortable policy. And I know both departments strongly endorse and support this change, so I think this is great, and I'm all for it.
Thank you, Counselor Jordan. Counselor Bartley?
Yes, Madam Chair. I agree with everything that's been said. I'd just like to propose two really just technical amendments, if I could, just real easy ones, Madam Chair. One is in Section B. It says, "The Board Public Works." I'd like to propose we put the word "of" in between board and public. And second of all, only because I don't like to use pronouns in legislation, so, and we pretty much use proper names all the way throughout, except at the end of Section B, we says in accordance with their policy. I'd just like to change "their" to Holyoke Water Works. I'd like to propose those two amendments, if I could, please, Madam Chair.
On the amendments, all in favor?
Aye.
Counselor Lisi, under discussion,
Thank you. I have a question for Kara, so if we could.
motion to suspend the rules,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Board of Public Works?
It's the Board of Public Works.
Yes, I was confused reading it, so great, thank you.
So amendment to change
To
the there,
be under B?
Yeah.
Yeah,
the word there, THEIR, to
so just a
The
quick
Board
motion.
of Public Works.
Yes,
sewer commission.
yes.
Okay, do we have to reconsider that? No, just we're okay.
Kind of proves your point why we don't use
Yeah,
pronouns.
I just, yeah. Prove my own point, that was inadvertent.
It's referring, but whatever. That's fine.
Okay, to be official, do you just want to amend,
Yes. I
make
mean,
an order to amend?
Yeah, motion to amend.
Motion second.
All in favor?
Aye. Kara, my question is if this language creates the agreement for the Holyoke Water Works to engage in services as an independent contractor, or if there will be a number of independent contracts raised for each individual water shutoff program, water shutoff decision.
No, so what I discussed with David Conti when we met, the ordinance is kind of creating the broad framework. What the Waterworks Board would like to see is essentially a contract with the DPW. And so that's what that agreement is referred to. That will, the two boards will enter into an agreement that's going to govern how the Waterworks will act as the contractor for the water shutoffs.
So there'll just be one overarching policy, and then that's going to authorize the waterworks to go in and implement the policy for each individual case in which there is this default payment. So we don't have a number of individual contracts each time there's a localized case, but we have one overarching contract that authorizes the waterworks to implement this policy.
And it's not, I mean, just to be clear, it's the sewer commission's policy. The Waterworks is just implementing essentially one step of it. And so that's what, that agreement will be for.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, again, make sure that we weren't creating independent contracts for each time they had to move forward on the shut-off situation.
And the agreement is, where things such as the indemnification will be, and liabilities will be addressed. It's not really proper in an ordinance, so the agreement will spell out those types of technicalities.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor McGivern?
Well, Attorney Cooney's at the mic. Thank you. Kara, is it important that we call the water department or refer to it as an independent contractor? And I ask that question for two reasons. If there is, under your opinion, a reason for that to put teeth into this adopting of this Mass General Law and putting it into ordinance, that's fine. But the water department and the sewer department are both city agencies, and neither one of them should be independent contractors for anybody. And I hate to set a precedent or try to refer to this as something that is someone out there trying to make money. Is there a different way of rephrasing that, or is it important?
I think what that, and this was suggested by the Waterworks, I think the idea is that they are, and again, to be clear, this water shutoff is because somebody hasn't paid their sewer bill. They're not shutting it off because of non-payment for water. And so the idea is that this is all falling under the authority of the Board of Public Works. This is not the waterworks authority to shut off the water. And so I think they wanted that to be clear that they're not doing this under their, kind of their special legislation. The DPW is essentially hiring them as a contractor to do this
But
one.
the agreement itself states that, the fact that there
When
is
we
an
get to
agreement.
actually drafting an agreement.
Yeah, that there is an agreement, you know, but to call them an independent contractor, I think, I mean, the water department has always thought of themselves as an independent entity, but that's they do such a good job, we allow them to think that way.
I
But-
don't mind if, I don't mind if you strike that because the agreement is going to ultimately have all the details there, so if you wanted to take that out of the ordinance, that's fine, the relationship will be clear in the agreement that we eventually come to.
If the committee could just consider that, I think it's not a major point, but in future reference, when someone reads this that don't know the history of it, when Kevin's not around to tell us the history, you know, we, no, I'm serious though, you know, someone's gonna read it and think different. And I think, you know, the agreement itself is gonna take care of the matter that it's not the water department shutting the water off for their purposes, they're doing it for the sewer commission itself for their purposes.
I would,
You could just strike independent, if that's you could just say engage the services of the Holyoke Water Works to
To
terminate.
terminate?
And just strike the as an independent. I'm fine.
And you don't think it'll create any issue for the
Um,
waterworks?
They would prefer to have that, but
why don't we just say as an agent, so that there is this relationship of these two different entities at play there, and it's not an independent contracted
those-
relationship, but
I think those have different legal, I would just take it out if you're not.
Depends how strong people feel.
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, okay, because I think now we're getting into really technical legal language when, if you say the word agent or agency, because that's a whole different branch of law, and that opens up all sorts of different liability questions. I like the fact that it says independent contractor, whether historically it might be amorphous, I don't think it matters. I think we're just talking about this for liability reasons.
Right.
I would say leave it as it is. If we need to amend it down the road, if we get an opinion from council for the Holyoke Water Works, for example, perhaps then we can strike it. But with us right here, I don't think so. I think we should leave it as it is.
Well, this,
We heard from our lawyer, and I think our lawyer says that the agreement itself takes care of covering the bases the way we want them to be covered, which has been spelled out to us. I just respectfully ask, again, it's not major, but independent contractor just sends the wrong message in other areas. And the water department asked for it.
so,
Kara, what's your recommendation, in or out?
Either one is fine. Honestly, I think the agreement is gonna cover in much more detail what that relationship is and cover the technicalities as far as liability, if the water shut off accidentally.
so I would say
That's really-
strike it then.
It's still gonna be, right, I mean, theoretically, the agreement will govern the relationship of the parties anyways, and therefore, it's not really that important what the ordinance per se says, because the agreement itself will be binding, and I'm sure the water department will take their opportunity at that point to spell out the relationship.
Exactly.
Yeah, so,
language is clear that it is the Public Works Sewer Commission that is asking the waterworks to do something under B.
Yes.
So,
well,
right
in the
now-
spirit of compromise and consensus, and if Counselor McGivern feels that's strong, the law department don't have an objection, I don't oppose deleting as an independent contractor that language, I mean, so if that makes everyone feel more comfortable, I mean.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to amend B by deleting as an independent contractor.
Discussion?
Under discussion.
Yeah.
Counselor Bartley?
Again, I didn't hear a reason, other than gee whiz, they always think like they're independent. Well, so does the Holyoke Gas and Electric. I mean, so does any other number of bodies here. I think we're just talking about liability here, and I guess it'll be laid out in a contract. But short of us hearing an opinion from, and by the way, our legal counsel said either way is fine. So I prefer to leave the language in because it makes it very clear that they are acting as an independent contractor, not underneath the, it's separate and distinct from the Board of Public Works. Again, I didn't hear a reason to take it out other than there's some history maybe, but I think maybe we should, I think we should move on this tonight, but I'd rather hear from council from Waterworks, specifically if they have an opinion on it, as opposed to us doing it. I think we can leave it in now. If we want to amend it later to take it out because Waterworks council feels it shouldn't be in, fine, but I would say leave it in now. And whatever the body wants, that's okay, but I won't support it.
Thank you, Counselor Bartley. Does the body wish to suspend rules to hear from counsel from Waterworks?
Sure, if he wants to speak.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi, Attorney Thomas Wilson. One of the main things that we discussed when we first discussed this with the board was what happens if we get, we shut somebody's water off by accident? What happens if we're shutting water off and something breaks worse? The 97,000 whatevers you get into whenever you do a contract. And one of the reasons I thought that the independent contractor is not for the whole, I guess what I did in my mind is separate this as a new business for the water department, shutting off now, instead of doing it for themselves, they're now working for the sewer department, doing it as a new business, as a new endeavor almost. And it almost seems like they should be an independent contractor, in my opinion, so that if somebody decides to sue the city, they go to the water department, and I know it's, Kara would wind up, or somebody would wind up defending it, but one of the reasons they really wanted to jump into this, one of the discussions that I know they've had with several of you was the easiest, quickest way to do it, but they also want to protect themselves and make sure that the people know that they're not shutting off the water, they're being hired by the Board of Public Works Sewer Department to do it, as if almost you hired a private company to do it. Instead of that, the water department has the expertise, has the equipment, has everything, and you're actually extending their powers, which is one of the reasons first we thought we had to go to the state, if you remember, and everything like that. This is giving them a new job, a new power, something they've never done before. It was work for somebody else in terms of shutting off the bills. So there was a lot of discussion about this phrase and about anyway in an agreement protecting them from suits. I mean, as I say, and any lawyer will tell you, anybody can sue anybody over anything, anytime, anyplace, anywhere. Makes America great. But on the other hand, they really were very positive and very insistent on words like that, so they would not have any liability other than as an independent contractor.
Thank you. And that was my recollection of their main concern in our earlier meetings. Counselor McGivern?
I could ask Attorney Wilson just two questions. Sure. Toby, one is, if there is a suit, it's the agreement that will stand out to protect the water department.
As Joe, sometimes when in lawsuits, you look at if it was to the state, you look at the legislative background and the intention and things like that. And to me, that it would just be this would be one more huge rung in the paper trail that says independent contractor.
But the answer to my question is yes.
They would look at both.
I work with lawyers all day, Toby.
I know, but we're civil, so we
you're
look at everything.
You're going to fight the agreement between the water department and the sewer department is what's going to fight any lawsuit. What's going to win any lawsuit?
It might, or the intent of everybody involved. When you look at, if the agreement isn't...
The intent is spelled out, I believe, in the language we have right in front of us. The intent in the agreement is more important, and that's why we have Kara, yourself, the water department, and we all stand to protect both entities, to protect the city itself.
We discussed this, Councilor McGivern, at length, the water department. In the phrase independent, Dave Conti and I discussed it. I think we discussed it with Kara first. That was something that that was one of the main points, was that phrase that we are only, in this aspect only, we are working for the sewer department. We don't want to be an employee because that's something else. So we thought that the phrasing of independent contractor was clear enough to say that we're only working for the man, we're working for the Board of Public Works Water Department.
So the second question is, as a lifelong Hoyoker, do you recognize both of these as city departments?
As a lifelong Holyoker, I haven't much thought into it, but I believe they're both, I think that they are they both are Holyoke municipal departments, but there's legal, we looked at the language, the water departments back in the 1800s, that was created by an act of the legislature giving them powers. Gas and electric, I understand, has the same issue, even though I've never researched it. So in this, I'm just talking about this case, in terms of what's happened in years and years before. All I'm here is to do is protect the water department from some lawsuit or some action because they shut the wrong water off, or they broke something doing it, or something happened, and that's why I get paid, and that's what I'm doing, is to protect them. So that's my answer.
Thank you.
That's my answer.
Right now, we have a motion before us to amend the language. All in favor? All opposed?
No.
The motion fails. So the motion remaining on the table is the motion to adopt the language as presented to the committee tonight,
As amended,
as amended with the two changes, Board of Public Works, and in accordance with the Board of Public Works policy.
right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So all in favor of the ordinance as amended?
Aye.
All opposed? It carries 5-0. Thank you very much,
And
everyone.
our full council meeting's what, June 7th, I think?
Yes, it will be presented at the full council meeting.
On June 7th. So we'll have that up for a vote to adopt this shut-off policy on June 7th before the whole council. Then it'll be law, assuming the mayor signs it, which I would assume he will. Okay, great.
I'll accept a motion to take up item 5.
Yep, motion to take up item number 5 off the table.
All in favor?
Aye.
So item 5 was a zone change application of Frontier Development at 1575 Northampton Street, former Lynch School, map 105, block 00, parcel 061, from current zone R1A to proposed zone BH. We did receive a recommendation from the planning board relative to this property, and it has been read into the record, but I will read it tonight. Dear Counselor Bacon, please be advised that at its March 29, 2016 meeting, the Holyoke Planning Board discussed the above referenced zone change request, the R1A to BH at 1575 Northampton Street. After consideration of all information and testimony presented during the public hearing, the board voted 2-1 to recommend to the Ordinance Committee of the City Council that the zoning change request of R1A residential single family to BH highway business be approved. The board found that in compliance with the 2013 City Council order to market and sell the property, the proposed BH zone would be the highest and best use for the property. This being a gateway to the city, the existing parcels are all zoned BH. This parcel is an outlier. The board noted that during the public hearing, no one opposed the petition. In fact, people came forward in favor to the zone change for BH. If you have any questions regarding, please feel free to contact me, signed by the chair, Mimi Panich.
Motion to receive the report and recommendation and adopt.
I will second it just for discussion, and then I'm not sure if I will support this project or not.
Okay, so we have the order and the motion before us, so under discussion, Councilor Jordan?
I'll make a motion that we receive their recommendation, thank them kindly for it, but I'm gonna make a motion that the zone change be denied.
Second.
So under discussion of that?
Wishes to,
Yeah, amendment so that we deny the zone change, yeah.
do you wish to
Yeah,
discuss
just,
under Councilor
yeah,
Jordan?
just very briefly. I feel that the proposal, listened very carefully to everything that the applicant had brought forward on the petition. I feel it's not compatible with the neighborhood as proposed. I think that the proposed traffic plan, as well as the safety concerns related to it, are not adequately safe as proposed, certainly to my sufficient concerns, as well as those that I've heard from my constituents. And I think as proposed, it's not the highest and best use for the property. And so those are, not that we need to really give reasons, but those are the primary things that come to mind in my proposal to deny the zone change.
Councilor Lopez.
I've been thinking about this. I don't like the traffic situation in that corner, so that's my main reason, and I don't like the project. I will be honest to you, and I don't think that creating more problem with traffic, in my opinion, is not the solution. Also, I will not be happy keeping Lynch School there vacant. So it's one of those hard decisions that you have to make as a city councilor. But at this point, I think I probably will be voting no. But we will see. Thank you.
Councilor Nelson.
Yes, thank you so much, committee members. I came here for a few items this evening, and this is one of them. I, too, have to agree with President Jordan and my colleague, Councilor Lopez, and I thank the committee for voting against this recommendation for all of the above-mentioned reasons, but also from the constituent outreach and concerns of the constituency and saying, is this the best use for development? And I'm not against, again, jobs, but was this parcel development that this developer proposed the best ideal development for the city of Holyoke? And that is a resounding no. I will be voting against or supporting this if it comes out of committee as against the zone change, where I agree this parcel is and has been sitting idle. I've done my research since before I got on. I do not feel that this is in the best interest of the city of Holyoke. Again, same reasons, the traffic concern, the open space that's right directly behind the former Lynch School property, all of these things, and the constituent outreach from regardless of what political ideology you come from, everyone's saying in this community in the city of Holyoke, no, this isn't the best deal for the city of Holyoke. So for that, I support the committee's amendment to reject the recommendation of the planning board.
Councilor McGivern.
Thank you. As we know, zone changes are about use. Use is the idea of what is compatible to a neighborhood, the immediate neighborhood, what is compatible to the larger neighborhood, and what's the best for the city. The question before us is to remain a zone of what is 1 RA, single-family residential, or change it to business highway as our master plan dictates it should be. We asked that the property known as Lynch School be marketed for commercial purposes. We did so because we understand, and I think we all recognize, Lynch School, 9 years now, has been off the books as a school use. It would be incredibly expensive to bring it back into a school use, more expensive to bring it back into residential property because of the asbestos that's in that building, because it's sat vacant for so long, and there's just no one that has that kind of money to redevelop that building into a residential use. Business highway allows for us to market this property better. It's not about the developer that's currently working with the city. It's about what is the best use for this property. I brought and raised the questions of traffic mitigation, traffic issues from the beginning of the public hearings, and I agree. There is a serious traffic issue that has to be addressed. It should be addressed regardless of when the property is developed, but it should be addressed as quickly as possible. We need to connect a plan with the State Route 141, both at Hamden and Northampton Street, going towards East Hampton, and at Dwight in Northampton Street, coming away from East Hampton. Those lights need to be synchronized, and the queues need to be set up to allow for traffic in and out of not just the Lynch School property, but all the properties that are commercial on that street. Leaving it residential and saying that we're going to develop it as residential, I would say that's spot zoning. Everything next to this property is business highway or commercial. The possibility of new taxes and new jobs is why I think we want to market the property. Denying a developer without good reason is not our prerogative. Working with a developer to ensure that traffic is mitigated in the correct way, working that the property is developed to its best use, is with what the city can encourage and do so. But I believe that in the spirit of the master plan, we need to change the zone to market it for commercial use and to get some of those new tax dollars and jobs that we desperately need.
Thank you, Counselor McGivern. Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. I think that Councilor McGivern said a lot of the things that I'd like to say, but really, really the zoning is about use, and the highest and best use for that property and for that entire area would be bringing it up to date with the other parcels in that area and making it BH. The problem in this situation is we have a project that I think is, the project itself doesn't actualize the highest and best use of the BH district. And I think that to some extent to move on the zone change after the property, it gives us the ability to have some added security and have some additional control over what would happen to that property. I also think it puts us on the other side of the coin. I also think that it puts us at a slight disadvantage because we did not market the city for commercial development with the possibility of it being a BH zone. So I feel like if it were zone BH to begin with, we might have a more varied set of proposals to consider. When the residents came down from that neighborhood and spoke about the wish to have like a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods or some different type of project there, my response to them was that any of these other proposed projects would also require the zone to be changed to BH. I think BH is a good fit for that area. I'm not thrilled by the current project, and at this point in time, I see they go hand in hand. So, if we look at it through the lens of zoning itself, I think that BH is the right zone. If we look at it from the lens of the projects that are coming before us, I think that I'd like to see the city do better in terms of attracting a nicer project for that area. But these are the rules of the game. We have very little control. Like I feel like people are always saying, you should do this with that property, you should do this with that property, and talking to the city about how we should develop these different properties in different ways. But we really don't, A, own a lot of these properties, and B, when we do, we are not the developer. We are simply the property owner, and so there's very little control that we have over what type of developments come onto those properties and what they look like. And that really, I think that's really unfortunate. It's one of the things that I've noticed being, 6 or so years on this ordinance committee, that we really do have very little control over the type of developments that come into the city. And that's a state level issue that would need to be addressed. Again, I see it as two sides of the coin. From a development perspective, or I should say from the planning and property zoning uses end of the perspective, I see BH as the proper zone. I'm not thrilled with the project that we're considering to change the zone for. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Counselor Bartley.
Some outstanding comments on this issue by all counselors, and I really respect everything that was said earlier. I'm going to vote against this. I'm going to vote in support of the motion to deny the zone change. I probably have numerous reasons to do it. I think ultimately, I voted a few years ago to declare the property surplus. But there's a caveat that we have the card in our hand to change the zone or not change the zone. And I don't feel that this is the highest and best use for this project. Now, I know there's theoretical niceties saying that we're up here to discuss use. What's the best use for but I happen to live in the real world. I'm sorry, I do. And to see the projects that are proposed, they don't measure up. The applicant doesn't, now it doesn't mean I don't respect all the hard work that went in by developers and council, et cetera, that went into this, respected and admired, and I hope somebody comes back again. I will also let the public know that there is development in Holyoke, and quite a bit of it, in several parts of the city. I think we're all aware of Appleton Street. We're all aware of what's happening in Lyman Terrace. We're all aware, certainly, what's happening at the Holyoke Mall area. And I think a lot of us are going to be very happy to hear what's coming at the corner of Beach and Sargent. And that was a decision that the committee that I happen to chair, we declared that property surplus, and we have a wonderful vendor now that is approved coming in, and they're going to build, spend about $1 million in the city of Holyoke, create a lot of jobs, and they're going to have a fantastic business right next to the current CVS. How ironic is that? Right next to the and not even the newest CVS, by the way. But it's going to be a tremendous and a desperately needed business too. And talk about adding diversity in the financial community. That's going to be a wonderful win for the city of Holyoke. And it was just confirmed this week in Business Week as well. So there are some good things happening. I just don't think this particular project cuts it at this point. I know we're desperate for tax revenue and jobs, but I mean, I just heard today that the number of jobs being created, just construction jobs on Lyman Street, where that project gets rolling, over 200 construction jobs for 24-month period on Lyman Street. On Lyman Terrace. It's just, I mean, that's just going to do wonders for that part of the city. Just the small businesses there are just going to, it's just going to be great. So let's. The doom and gloom is not there. I just don't think this project's a winner, and I really support the president's motion. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to be heard under discussion? Seeing none, the motion that we have before us right now is to receive the recommendation from the planning board and deny the recommendation to change the zone. So on that motion, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? So we have 4 in favor to deny and 1 opposed.
And Madam Chair, we'll state on the committee jacket, we'll give some of these reasons that all those out in the committee jacket.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor McGivern?
Will be put into a legal form for.
Oh yeah, it's going up for a vote.
We would,
Oh yeah, the whole application, the whole thing's gonna go up. Right, so if the council votes yes, then it will pass. Yeah.
do we have to make a as a point of order, do
We're
we
gonna take
need
the whole
to,
proposal
do we
and
need to
read it.
request that specifically to you, Kara?
All right, well.
So there needs to be a
Move to
motion.
take okay, motion to have the applicant's proposal with, our committee recommendation 4-1 to deny it, all be sent to the committee sent to the full council for a final vote.
In legal form.
In whatever form meets legal requirements.
So we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Aye. I'll accept a motion on item 6.
Motion taken, number 6.
All in favor? Aye. Item 6 is a petition filed by Dennis Croto of Holyoke for a zone change at 79 and 83 Lower Westfield Road from BL to BG or IG. In this regard, we have received a recommendation from the planning board dated May 2nd, 2016, addressed to me as the chair. It advises us, dear Councilor Vacan, please be advised that the Holyoke Planning Board at their April 26, 2016 meeting discussed a zone change petition submitted by Dennis Croto for the property located at 79 and 83 Lower Westfield Road, owned by Dennis Croto. Based on information received during the public hearing, the board voted unanimously to recommend to the Ordinance Committee of the City Council that the zone change request be denied. Our recommendation is based on the following considerations. First, we believe it is likely that to grant this application would result in the creation of an impermissible spot zone. Second, to rezone these parcels as the applicant has requested would permit a wide variety of uses that could have a substantial negative impact on the neighborhood and abutters. Third, abutters came forward to oppose the rezoning during the course of our public hearings, citing its probable adverse impact. Finally, we note that there are unresolved concerns related to future development in the area due to an existing water feature, which would make these parcels particularly troubling candidates for piecemeal rezoning and development, even in the absence of issues of spot zoning and fragmentation of zoning districts. For all these reasons, we believe that the proposed zone change to BG or IG would not be the highest and best use of these parcels, and as noted above, recommend that the application be denied.
See the recommendation and approve.
Adopt the zone change or deny the zone change?
Adopt the recommendations of the planning
Yeah.
board.
I'll second that.
Second.
Sorry.
It's,
The
like,
location is the old Christmas tree shop that has
Oh,
been
okay.
closed for
No, I'm all set.
a few years now, and the house that's next to it.
So I'm agreed.
Thank you. Is there anybody else
Just to-
who
just
wishes
put
to
in
speak
there-
under discussion?
Yeah, just-
Counselor Jordan?
yeah, just said when we do the committee report, if we could summarize our concurrence with the reasons that the planning board articulated, and we just put those into some bullet points. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion before us is to accept the recommendation of the planning board to deny the zone change for the reasons cited in the planning board's recommendation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? No, the motion carries 5-0.
Motion to remove item 7 from the table.
Second.
Are we doing 7, 8, 9, and 10?
Those could all be taken as a package.
I think so.
Yeah, I agree.
My intention was that they all seem to go together.
Yeah, so motion on the, then is to take 7 through 10 as a package and remove from the table for discussion.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So item 7 was filed by Counselor Bartley, that the City of Holyoke amend Chapter 30 of its Code of Ordinances to provide for the public procurement of outside legal counsel. Since Chapter 30B, Section 1-15 exempts procurement of legal services from public bid laws, this order would supersede state law and increase consumer protection. Item 8, filed by Counselor Soto, that the City of Holyoke amends Chapter 30 of its Code of Ordinances to provide for the public procurement of ambulance service. Since Chapter 30B, Section 1-24 exempts procurement of ambulance services from public bid laws, this order would supersede state law and increase consumer protection. Item 9, filed by Counselor Bartley, order that the City of Holyoke amends Chapter 30 of its Code of Ordinances to provide for the public procurement of banking service. Since Chapter 30B, Section 1-23 exempts procurement of banking services from public bid laws, this order would supersede state law and increase consumer protection. Item 10, filed by Counselor Bartley, order to strengthen procurement laws, the City of Holyoke will put police-ordered towing and any other public towing services out to bid on at least a biennial basis. So we have had a number of meetings and we have language before us that has been amended, that had come back to the committee, and the committee had tabled it to look at further language regarding a preamble or anything relative to some ethics concerns. And so this is where we are so far, and so I'll open the floor to the maker of the order, Counselor Bartley.
I haven't seen the language, so we have some language on these, because
I had forwarded the language that we had, that Kara had given to us at the previous meeting. I thought I'd forwarded it to the whole committee. I know I forwarded it to Counselor Jordan. And Counselor Jordan isn't in the room at the moment, but he had reached out to me relative to it, and I had forwarded it to him.
Can we have Kara?
Sure, under suspension, Kara, if you,
Then if I can
And, hang on, I probably have it, I have a little bit of a pile here, so let me just take a moment.
I didn't have, there wasn't anything new for tonight, so it should be with the order, I would assume, the drafts from the prior.
Hang on a sec. Right, what I had forwarded was the last language
Okay.
that we had at the last committee meeting that we took it up at.
And I can send that to Counselor Lopez, since you weren't.
I agree with that.
And Counselor Lopez is new to the
Sure.
committee, so hang on a second.
So, Madam Chair, just, may I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so-
Counselor Bartley?
Yeah, so I really appreciate this. I'm of the opinion that I at some point, I'd like to make a motion to approve all of these and to say, let's get them all in legal form so that we can, you know, parse through the language, so.
I would second that motion. I think we've been reviewing it and we've got the language before us tonight, and also for the benefit of Councilor Lopez. Why don't we, forward on getting them into legal form and review them in legal form for next week?
And just under discussion, Madam Chair?
Yes,
So
Counselor
for
Bartley?
Councilor Lopez, and so, for anybody listening, it's because this is, and we've said this before, so under, you know, Chapter 30B of Mass General Law makes a series of just 30-some odd exemptions from public procurement. And they're exempted not because of anything other than the fact that when the legislators in Boston went to make the laws, that there were certain lobbyists for accountants and for lawyers and for towing companies that wanted it exempt. There's no other real reason for it to have, and bankers, they just want, and by having it exempt from public procurement laws, what does that do? Well, it allows the executive to make an executive decision, to say, I direct the contract to go to A, B, or C, or maybe A, or whomever. I'm not saying that this is a new practice, because it's not. It's a very old practice. But what are the consequences of that practice? Well, the consequences are that A, the public doesn't know who has these contracts. B, the public doesn't know what's being spent. C, there's all sorts of campaign contributions coming in to the executive branch for making these decisions that benefit the bottom line of private companies who benefit by using public services. Very, very simple and straightforward. So I really appreciate the committee hopefully, you know, getting behind this, and we had the legal language. And I thought that the law department did a beautiful job with the language we just had for the water shutoff authority for the water department. It was just beautiful, clear, normal, non-legalese, for the most part, language. And I thought it was concise, and that's hope. My hope is that we'll have something similar for these, that will say, you know, basically that we want, that is the intent of the city of Holyoke to get the best bang for our buck, and that we want to direct the procurement office with the appropriate department heads to craft the right RFPs to get them out to the public to bid. That's my hope. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor Bartley.
Okay. Is that a
Thank you,
copy?
Counselor
Is that a
Bartley.
copy,
This is, I just haven't been able to compare whether these copies are exactly the same. I think we had two renditions. But that's the copy I had in my file. Counselor Jourdain?
Yeah. I would like to ask the law department to review for our next meeting. I want to put in an amendment, as I articulated, I touched on it the last time we discussed this topic, regarding a preclusion from the mayor or the treasurer or anybody who is in the awarding authority, purchasing director, any of these people, shall not receive any money, anything of any consideration for at least a period of 1 year before or 1 year after the awarding of any of these contracts. And this also is a preclusion from their, in the case of elected officials, their campaign committees receiving any money from any principal of any corporation that is the awardee of any of these contracts. This is absolutely necessary because, that is a motion.
I'll second.
The view here is, as I stated at the last meeting, is I am very concerned to read articles in the newspaper and to follow campaign finance reports. And I'm watching literally from the president down to chief bottle washer of some of these companies are making contributions to the mayor. And it certainly does not inspire confidence in the government when you gotta believe, and it's hard for one to argue because of the quantity of the donations, that it certainly doesn't lead one to believe, if not actual conflict, certainly the appearance of conflict between the awarding of some of these contracts and the massive quantity of donations being taken in simultaneously to these things. So I'm certainly concerned about that. I would like to have an ethics amendment located in here. And even if one component of it is a restatement of 268A, that should be in here. And I would also like to have this 1 year preclusion from, we already know corporations are precluded by state law from making donations, so we don't have to worry about that problem. We already have that covered. But I'm not sure that we have the authority to preclude people from making the donations. I do believe we have the authority to preclude people who are our employees, a la the mayor, a la the treasurer, all of these other people, from receiving these type of donations. And so I think that is under the scope of the authority that we have. So therefore, I would like to say that the mayor or any other elected official shall not be a recipient of any donation from the principal of any corporation or company or direct person, in the case of if it's a sole proprietor, who happens to have one of these contracts. And for that matter, I have no problem adding on city councilors to that as well.
Second.
So we can add, we'll throw us into the mix as well. So I'm happy to bite the bullet on that one as well, from now until eternity. So there you have it. So that's that. So I'd ask the law department to review that and to draft something up for our next meeting, please. 1 year from the 1 year before an award, and 1 year, or should we say during the duration of while the person has the contract? I would say from, yeah.
Then a year after.
From the conclusion of the contract. After the conclusion of the contract. So while the person has the contract, so he cannot award a contract to somebody he has received a contribution from for the period of 1 year within of that period of that time to the during the duration of the time that they have the contract to a period of 1 year after services are concluded.
So just as a point of information for those who may be watching, I was sending the language to our new member and to the remaining members of the committee to make sure that we're all looking at the most recent one, which was from, in my records, from March 21st. And so everybody, that's the last version that I'm aware of. So that would be what we would be making the amendments to tonight. Do you agree with that, Kira? I mean, that's when I received it, and the committee as a whole did receive it from you, but since then, because things get so buried, I forwarded it back out to Councilor Jordan and Councilor Bartley, but I want to just make sure there's been a lag, and so we're all on the same page. No problem, no problem. There were just some concepts people wanted to flesh out, so I think we're there.
Yeah.
And, now, so is it the will of the committee that these amendments with the legal form come back to
Yes.
us?
That'd be my vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
And then we'll give it a review, and then if we feel comfortable, we'll kick around the final language, and then we'll make some final actions from there.
okay.
Does that sound fair?
And
So
this is a
hopefully in
motion, and you
June.
seconded the motion as amended?
I did.
Yeah.
Okay. Under discussion? Yeah. Counselor Lisi?
Thank you. I'm just unclear if, does the city of Holyoke have, a section of the ordinance that governs ethics? No. And you have proposed that we develop a whole set of ethics ordinances,
I
correct?
proposed a sunshine ordinance before. Yeah, you may re-see that at some point, yes. Thank you for reminding me.
I feel like we did have something out there that said we should develop, I mean, I wouldn't.
That was on, city employment.
Yes.
That was,
Yes, so we-
that was an oldie but goodie on city employment, and how that would work. But yeah, that's probably worth bringing back up.
And I only mention it because I mean, I think that everything that you're raising has legitimate points. I feel like burying it into the purchasing laws and the procurement laws related to bids and public procurement it just seems like a strange place to bury it. And so I'd be more interested in developing a comprehensive set of ethics ordinances where we could put all related types of ordinances as opposed to burying these ethics ordinances into procurement.
Right. I think you raise a good point. The only thing I would say is if we're, can I just make one, I'm just gonna, one sentence.
All right, because I have somebody in the queue.
Oh, I apologize.
Thank
Is, you're right, however, this is where the bulk of what's going on is going on. So that we're kind of like flying right over the target.
Counselor McGivern?
Thank you. Putting aside Kevin's amendment, and I do think that should stand alone, and I get what Councilor Jordan is saying and understand the importance of it on an ethical, position. And I also recognize that, the Ethics Commission of the state level and finance campaign laws are strict and should probably address it too. I'd just like to talk about, it looks like we're having a roundtable discussion on 4 separate orders that will eventually be 4 separate votes. And well, I'm asking for a reason. I understand the arguments that are being presented. I'm not trying to change the arguments that are being presented, but there's a flip side to some of why these services are exempt from the administrative, from the mayoral level of choosing services, from the city choosing services. And I think whether it's legal services or banking services especially, that choice is important. And I think when you're looking for an attorney or a law firm to provide a certain service, our city solicitor with the mayor's approval should have some flexibility there. I think in the area of banking services, the city needs to be able to choose a banking service, a bank that is compatible to the city's needs and can be compatible with working with all the city agents that the banking services, those who provide the banking services would work with. And I see the arguments, but I see a flip side of if we go too far, we could be forcing by no other dictation than an RFP in the bid, the service provider, which could be also detrimental to what we receive as service. And I think we have to be careful in that area, not to make it too stringent where we don't get the real service that we need in a lot of these areas.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Bartley?
Well, first of all, I really want to thank Councilor Lisi. I think made an excellent point. I agree with what she said. I would just suggest that Councilor Jordan's orders or amendments, our emphasis. I wouldn't characterize them as anything but that. I think they're emphasizing the fact that we want to have the most stringent, strict, most ethical type of procurement laws and other laws as any community in this area. And I agree with the counselor as well, that we should have a separate and distinct section about the importance of ethics. I also, like Councilor McGivern's points, that we don't want to tie the city's hands with procurement laws, but hopefully that's not, when you have choice, the hope is that you're going to have something better for the city, whether it's and it's not always the best price. That's really key, really important, but you always want to have the best product and or the best vendor or the most responsive service. Those are the things I'd want to emphasize, but we don't know what's out there until we at least ask the question, and that's the intent behind these orders. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Bartley. And I just want to weigh in that I appreciate the comments made by the counselors. I see the ethics ordinance as being a very complex ordinance to write. I think it will take a long time to craft it in a really thorough and good way. So I think in the meantime, to begin to make sure we're creating a competitive environment with our bidding and our contracts, I think it's good language from my perspective. So, is there anyone else who wishes to speak under discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to adopt as amended?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So the motion passes 5-0, and this will go to legal for legal form with the amendment and come back to committee for final review.
Motion ticket number 12. Oh,
Just as a technical question, is there a reasonable timeline for you, Kara?
Could you have it for?
What would be reasonable
That's
for
3
you?
weeks.
Okay, thank you.
motion ticket number 12.
Second.
Let me just find my agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
So item 12 was filed by Counselor Roman, ordered that a handicap sign be placed in front of 136 Sargent Street for Ivan Mora. This was my error. This was before us at the last committee meeting. It got buried in my papers, and I didn't see the report from the Disabilities Commission, which Don Welch had made a site visit. He had recommended that it be approved, and my understanding is we already have it in legal form, so that...
Just to be safe, I make a motion to be adopted.
Second.
Right. We still have to adopt it because we hadn't.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Do we have measurements? Wasn't that part? No.
oh,
So it
okay.
needs to be drafted into legal form with the measurement.
Okay, that's right. We had to do it in order because otherwise we were jumping ahead of ourselves.
Okay,
Because I got all the original.
Oh, okay.
good.
Because,
Technically, I should get that back.
right, because there was,
Just hold on to it, I guess.
So,
Who's gonna
yeah.
give it to the engineer quicker? Thank you.
right, because I did, but I mean, in fairness, I did have the order, I did have the report attached to it, so I don't want to point blame where it isn't deserved. So, do you need this?
Absolutely. It's just like the good old days.
Oh, okay.
It's like going into a time machine.
Okay.
It's like going into a time machine.
Okay, thank you very much. So, and just to be complete, I think we have a motion, and I need, all in favor? Aye. Adopted 5-0. Thank you.
Motion. Second.
Second.
Item 13, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This order was filed by Counselor Jourdain, ordered that in accordance with Section 2-349 licenses of the Code of Ordinances, that the City Council approve the lease of Roberts Field to the Holyoke Blue Sox. Now, you may recall that this is something new coming before us because of the ordinance we adopted relative to licenses that exceed a certain length of time. So I had asked Ryan, but I understand Kara got the copy of the license from Parks and Recs, Terry Shepherd, and did have an opportunity to look it over. She has seen them before. We have not as a committee. I had let Ryan know that if it's a straightforward, non-controversial license, that I was comfortable with it being sent over, and that we would be able to address it, because some of these are time-sensitive in that the season is starting, and I didn't want us to be holding up licenses either.
Agreed.
So under suspension of rules, Kara is willing to just go over the main aspects of the license with us, if
Yep.
that's the pleasure of the committee?
I only had one question, actually.
Okay.
on the whole thing, but-
And
Thank
this
you,
is
Kara.
the same lease that they've used in past years. I don't know if the rent stayed the same or changed, but, the rent, so it runs from June 1st through August 12th, and it's for the Blue Sox, obviously, to have their games and practices. It's $8,000 for 22 regular season games. They may have additional games if they make the playoffs, and practices
Which we
as
hope they
well.
do.
That's pretty much it. It mostly just outlines the various responsibilities of who sets up the field and what the Blue Sox are responsible, so.
Are there any questions by members of the committee or counselors present?
I just had one.
Counselor Jordan?
Yeah, I had an opportunity to review the agreement, and it looks completely fine to me. I think that's a fair price. And I believe all the different safeguard provisions are adequate in it. I just wanted to ask one question on signature authority for the city. I'm intrigued as to the signature, is this standard for the Park and Rec, that they have, their 3 commissioners all have to sign off on agreements?
They always have all 3 commissioners sign.
Really? That's interesting. Is that typical of the, like, the DPW, if they have a contract, that their all 3 members of their commission sign, or
They,
different
it-
commissions around?
It
or-
depends. I know for EBG funds, I think all the commissioners sign.
As they don't take a vote to empower the director, or, like, I'm surprised it wasn't signed by Terry Shepherd as
Right.
opposed to.
I don't know. The Park and Rec, I can say typically it's the commissioners that always sign.
It's just kind of interesting, because usually in a corporate structure, you have the board of directors will vote to empower, say, the president or CFO to vote on those contracts, yeah. Okay, thank you. That was the only question I had.
Not seeing any other discussion, is there a motion?
I make a motion to be approved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes 5-0,
There's
and there's
nothing else.
only one motion to remain.
Oh, motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
The meeting
Aye.
is adjourned. Thank you all very much. Very
Toodaloo.
constructive meeting.
Good stuff. Cooking with gas.
Spotty's failing. We'll keep going.
Okay.
We'll keep going.
There's two Reese's Pieces eggs left.
Oh.
Right there.
There you go.